Hello and welcome to Views from the Market, in-market private equity and M&A in Canada. My name is Mario Nigro, and I'm a partner in the private equity and M&A group at Stikeman, Elliott. For today's podcast, I'd like to welcome our guest, River Ewing. River is a director of Hadley Family Capital, a family office based in Toronto. River, thank you for joining us and welcome.
Happy to be here, Mario, on my first podcast appearance with you. So very excited.
River, we always start the podcast by asking our guests to tell us a little bit about themselves, and in your case, the Hadley Family Capital. So why don't we start there?
Yeah, absolutely. So Hadley Family Capital really, the story starts in the 1960s. My grandfather started a foundry in his garage. So sort of a very classic entrepreneurship story and family business. He ended up growing that company, selling it to Alcoa, the public aluminum company, and ultimately was sort of mid-career and didn't really know what to do with the proceeds. He'd been a foundryman since he was a teenager. And so ended up purchasing another company down in St. Louis, Missouri that did the same thing. And that's the family's sort of largest operating asset today. We still own that company. And it's not a foundry like you quite would think. It's really aerospace manufacturing. So we make airplane engine parts, the heads-up displays, even the HVAC units. Anything that was built in the West and flies will likely have a part or two on it. So that was sort of the original basis for the family business. Since expanded into other operating companies, real estate, all the sort of typical things you'd expect for expanding, growing family business and the initial phases of a family office. My background is in business and philosophy, which I studied at Western. After graduating, I joined the family business, which at that time was just a sort of a collection of different assets. And I spent the first 2 years of my career really putting together what I later learned was the family office infrastructure. So sort of a management layer at the top to make sure we had a strategy and really sort of got our feet under us. Everything from governance, succession, reporting, reviewing the portfolio, figuring out what was working, what wasn't working, and really making sure that we had a strategy going forward. After that, I moved up to Montreal and purchased a company myself. It was a company that did industrial automation. So those robotic arms that you'd see in a car manufacturing facility, we built automation systems around those. That was actually a turnaround. So I purchased that company under bankruptcy, which was probably a very silly thing to do as a first operational foray, but I learned an absolute ton, had a great team around me that we were able to build, and ultimately was able to successfully turn that around with the great help of our team. And so it ended up as a success story. After that, I went to the States where I studied at Harvard Business School. I got my MBA. And that was really where I was introduced to the search fund model at ETA. I spent the 2 years really sort of diving into that ecosystem, learning with all the great resources that HBS had to offer, from the clubs to faculty, and really sort of getting a feel for it, even doing a few deals, small dollar deals, but deals to get a feel for the space. And really the impetus for that was we were at a point in our family business journey where we were moving from being sort of an enterprise family into an investing family office. The other thing is we wanted to make the move to stay close to the entrepreneurial spirit and also stay close to our core skill set, which was really small business operations. That's what we've been doing for 3 generations. And up to that point, we'd really just been sort of small business owners and operators. So that really is how we sort of got into search in the first place. And from there, we've been investing in the family's capital, both in Canada and the US, and are growing from there and having a great time doing it.
Reverend, we're seeing Hadley obviously active in the marketplace. Tell us a little bit about your sweet spot, like your unique family office. A lot of times we associate family offices more like majority deals, long term hold, but you're doing smaller deals. You've got a really broad vision in Hadley in terms of your thesis, your investment thesis. Tell us a little bit about the kind of investments you're making and what's motivating you for those investments.
Absolutely. So I would say our sweet spot is really traditional search, right? So the classic 1 to 5 million EBITDA, industry-agnostic with strong business characteristics. That's going to be a good match for sort of young, ambitious, but first-time CEO. So we really stick quite closely to the traditional model. We will do some self-funded as well. And historically, we've done independent sponsor, but that's much rarer. What we find in the market, and especially in Canada, I'd be happy to talk about this later on. We find that what eliminates us from a lot of the self-funded deals is really the governance. I mean, it's very important to us, coming from a family business background, from a family office background, and from the traditional model, that there's a board, right? That there's strong corporate governance set up. And sometimes that blocks us out of a lot of the self-funded deals. So our sweet spot tends to be the traditional market. And we really find that that's sort of the most tried and true model and are happy to sort of stick there for the most part.
In terms of your experience investing in search, we don't often see family offices investing in search. So it's great. It's kind of a newer thing for us. Traditionally, family offices have been kind of hesitant about making these type of investments. Can I ask you, what do you like about the space? Like, what is it that from a family office perspective that attracts you to the space?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's really unfortunate that there's not more family capital, family office capital in the space, because I think it's such a fantastic fit. Our view, sort of why family offices are these great partners for searchers, is they bring a lot more flexibility of capital than you might see with some of the more traditional investors, whether that's just the size of checks, whether that's the sort of structures they can look at, whether that's follow-on capital, or whether it's capital that might not be, strictly equity in the business, right? There's just more flexibility. One example is we're working with sort of a great company now that has their expansion is really limited by the real estate footprint that they have. And need that the business itself is asset light, but requires sort of additional properties to continue to grow. And so when you're a family office investor, you've got this sort of broad mandate, you can step in or you can bring in other people from your network to provide capital in those ways, whether it's a real estate injection, whether it's debt, whether it's equity. So there's more flexibility there. The other thing that I think is really important as an advantage for family offices, the majority of family offices really have done something similar, or in their past have experienced something similar to a search, in that they understand the value of small business. They know what it's like to be that owner operator, to be that principal. They can really kind of get in the mind of the seller. And I think that's very valuable to searchers. It's valuable to the sellers when they want to talk with the other investors, knowing that it's really sort of going from family business to family business, or that at least there's sort of that family business sensibility in the background there. And I think that could be a huge value add for searchers, and also helps keep family offices in an area where they sort of uniquely understand it. The other thing I would say, that I'm curious your take on this, I think we're the first family office in Canada to invest serially in search.
I agree. Absolutely. I mean, that's what's exciting about seeing you there. And if I could take it to the next level, River, not only you were investing in the search directly from the family office's capital, but then you went a step further and you created recently, not too long ago, closed the fund that focuses on investing in search funds. And maybe I'll ask you, which you probably can guess, given the previous answers, the motivation to kind of go to the next level. And then what are you hoping to do by establishing the fund that focuses on investing in traditional search funds?
So really the short answer is it's a matter of scale. And the sort of longer answer is we're really passionate about growing Canadian entrepreneurship and bringing in more family capital. As I said in the prior answer, I think there's a lot of fit between family offices, that long-term vision, the alignment with entrepreneurs, and sort of the investing philosophy. And for a lot of entrepreneurs, even post-search, family offices are going to be sort of these aspirational investors, right? I mean, this is going to be a life-changing wealth event for many searchers coming out, and sort of having an institution or organization or family office that's gone through some kind of a similar path can really be helpful in the long term for them. So that's what I'll say sort of up front. For us, bringing in that family capital, I want to be very clear that the fund is really sort of a small group of family offices that are coming together. And the idea is really, can we grow and scale so that searchers in Canada can get the same sort of professionalized resources and support and mentorship that they're going to get from the big players in the US, but have that locally in a family office, an investor that is Canadian, that's going to back a lot of Canadian cap tables, and is in a position to work very closely with Canadian searchers. And so that's really sort of the vision and the dream for Hadley Family Capital, is to really build it out into a professionalized institutional player in Canada. And at the end of the day, grow Canadian entrepreneurship and really, hopefully, develop this search market. As I know, the opportunity is huge. It's small businesses are 50% of the GDP, less than 100 employees. The vast majority of them, I believe it's over 90% in Canada, don't have that succession plan. Many of them owned by the baby boomer business owners that are near retirement. And so the opportunity is huge. And the more we can encourage sort of that next younger generation to really jump into entrepreneurship and see the value in continuing these small businesses, continue to grow them, I think the better off we're going to be.
River, you've been now investing in search funds for a number of years. You've kind of seen the space. You've kind of been able to see really some of the growth of the space. What are you seeing on the ground as an investor in terms of opportunities, in terms of the space itself? What's your perspective on where the space is at in Canada as an investor?
We're continuing to see growth despite tariff environment and all the uncertainty, which is encouraging. We haven't seen deals slow down. We're still busy. We're seeing a little over twice the number of searchers and of deals that we did last year. I think that's probably a few things. Part of that is sort of our growing reputation in the space, but part of that is just the space growing very quickly. Canada's sort of a unique market in search in that we don't have this very narrow and strong pipeline of elite MBA programs into sort of the search fund ecosystem and being a traditional searcher. And so in Canada, you have very rapid growth in the self-funded side of the market. You see sort of a wider variation in the quality of those searchers, I think. And so it's incumbent on investors to do a lot of diligence to really get to know the searchers, understand if it's for them, if they're ready for it, and how best to support them. But I mean, you have sort of very different sort of average searcher, right? In Canada, they're sort of a little bit older. They might be more mid-career. They've got great management experience. This is a very different profile from kind of potshot MBA in their late 20s coming out and trying to buy a business. And so that I think is very interesting. And I believe that will continue. You see that. I know there's a lot of efforts to continue to grow the self-funded side of the ecosystem in Canada.
River, when you're looking at opportunities from an investment point of view in the search fund space, are there any type of industries, in terms of what you see out there that you like? And I'm saying this more so because I expect we're going to get some searchers who listen to this and give them an idea of where you focus on, industries you like, size of deals, characteristics you're looking for, and the person who's presenting the deal. Any things you would say are key to you when you look at an investment?
Sure. So I won't go through the kind of laundry list of the very standard things. So I'll focus on things that might be a little bit more unique to us. I think for us, I'll start with the searchers, where we're looking at the searchers, we really want to see, first of all, they have a deep understanding of the model. I mean, that's table stakes. Beyond that, we want to see that they've got some success of entrepreneurship. That doesn't always mean starting your own company. Could mean taking on entrepreneurial roles, could mean taking on sort of entrepreneurial type risks, could be just sort of having that entrepreneurial mindset in what you're doing and what you're building, wherever you are in your career path. The other thing we really look at quite heavily, I think probably more so than other investors, is the opportunity cost. We really want to know that someone has a conviction about search such that they're willing to turn down an incredibly lucrative job offer elsewhere to walk away from a very promising career in order to bet on themselves, to take a more modest salary, and to try and find a business and really make it work. That sort of profile we find. And those sort of personality characteristics really make for great searchers, in addition to all the sort of stock standard criteria that people would look at. We tend to do 5 or 6 hour long interviews with our searchers. We like to really get to know them right up front. We don't take this view of backing all the searchers and having it sort of be a big optionality play. We really want to make sure that we're partnering with the right people right up front. And then you get the 2-year interview during the search phase, right? And if you're a self-funded searcher, I would say reach out earlier rather than later, because you sort of get that runway and you get to really know the partners that you're ultimately going to be on this journey with for 10 plus years. In terms of the businesses, I can say quickly, we're industry agnostic. We tend to focus more so on cash flowing companies where we're buying as a multiple cash flow. We very rarely will buy on multiples of ARR, where we tend to be sort of more old economy in that sense. And I think that's just sort of philosophical or stylistic difference on our part. We tend to stay away more from the style of search investing that is some of the software deals, just based on our own sort of expertise.
Remy, you're obviously all in on the space. You've been committed to it for years now and even more committed. Where do you think the space is going to go in Canada in terms of what you're seeing? What does the future hold? And I guess that, for example, what's the opportunity?
Well, the good thing is the opportunity far outpaces the number of searchers. And I think that will be the case for a very, very long time. You've got 100,000 sort of high quality businesses in Canada that can be potential acquisition targets for searchers, and maybe a few dozen searchers in Canada. What we're seeing with the growth of self-funded, I think that will probably continue, given the efforts in Canada to grow that part of the ecosystem. And I really think it's going to be incumbent on investors, and we've got a lot of work to do as investors to make sure that everybody is prepared, that they know what they're getting into, and that we don't sort of take the lazy path of saying, you've got these certain names on the resume, you went to this particular school, therefore we think you're ready. And if you didn't do that, then we're not going to back you, and we don't think this is right for you. It's really going to be on us to do the hard work of really getting to know the searchers, really understanding what their motivations are, why they're doing it, what they can bring to the table, and importantly, what sort of business is going to be a great match for them. I think in Canada, because you've got sort of more self-funded, you've got, as I said before, less of that pipeline. You've sort of got a lot more work to do as an investor to really understand who are the best searchers out there and what are the businesses that are going to match well with them. And I think we have to do that in a really thoughtful way to continue to build the ecosystem and not sort of steer people down the wrong path. And I know you do a particularly great job at that.
River, I want to thank you for joining us. Great to learn about yourself and learn about the Hadley Family Capital. It's great to have Hadley in our marketplace. There are not, as you said, many family offices who've committed to this space. So we greatly appreciate the fact that you not only invested in search, but now becoming a leader in investing in Canadian searches. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for telling the Hadley Family Capital story.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for tuning in to Views from the Market. Stay updated with the latest episodes by subscribing wherever you find your podcasts or visiting Stikeman.com/viewsfromthemarket.